Good evening, welcome, and thank you all for joining us this evening to cherish and share memories of the multifaceted. Mano's past never prescribed the future. With a noble resolve and a gracious heart, he conducted himself in a virtuous and honorable way. A life beautifully lived with a happy family and a fulfilling art where he had put his heart, head, and hand. He's lived like a lion with exceptional accomplishment, flawless contentment, self respect, and self love. The art of giving has been a part of Mahi and Mano's living, which is a beautiful lesson in grace for us. Unusual artist, uniquely glorious and luminous. Mano, here we are to celebrate your life. I invite Dr. Harini to offer the prayer song.
மன்னாதி பூதமொடு விண்ணாடி அண்டம் நீ மறை நான்கின் அடிமுடியும் நீ மதியும் நீ ரவியும் நீ புனலும் நீ அனலும் நீ மண்டலம் இரண்டெழும் நீ பெண்ணும் நீ ஆணும் நீ பல்லுயர்க்குயிரும் நீ பிறவும் நீ உருவமும் நீயே பேதாதி பேதம் நீ பாதாதி கேஷம் நீ பெற்ற தாய் தந்தையும் நீயே பிரம்மா நீ விஷ்ணு நீ கைலாசநாதன் நீ அல்லாவும் இயேசுவும் நீ எல்லாமும் ஒன்றான இறைவாணி என்னாலும் எல்லோர்க்கும் அருள்வாயே நலம் யாவும் எல்லாமும் ஒன்றான இறைவாணி என்னாலும் எல்லோர்க்கும் அருள்வாயே நலம் யாவும்.
Dr. P. Namperumal Swami, Chairman Emeritus and one of the founding members of the Anand Idea System, who had a close bonding with Mano, will speak a few words on the unique and fruitful association that Aravind and Mano had over the years.
Good evening to everyone. I am very much privileged to be here for this memorial meet for Manohar to discuss or to celebrate his multiple facets of our Mano. I am here to reflect the Aravind Eye Hospital, Aravind Eye Care System association with Mano and our reminiscences. Madurai and Mano are inseparable. So also Aravind and Mano. We have known him for more than 4 decades. The bonding between us is not the doctor-patient relationship. The association is blended with family members. He always calls Nachar, my wife, as his sister. And you know the relationship between me and him. That is what always he remembers. He has blended with the family so much. When he passed away, one of the members in our family said, "We have lost one of our family members." That is the binding we had. And also we recognized the unique qualities of him because of this long relationship what we had, his rich intellect and emotionally eternal feelings, enormous courage to face the reality in life, and creativity, innovative. Whatever things he does, he was doing it innovative way. It is rightly so that we have gathered here such numbers to celebrate his life, a beautiful life, a life he led. Both Mano and Mahima are very much inclined to give whatever they have giving, art of giving. That was their best. And we are glad to say that Aravind has been one of the beneficiaries of his giving, their giving. Both together, we can say that they worked hard in the art and drawing, produced beautiful cards, imitation, and the proceeds of that, again, they were selling, proceeds of that was given to Aravind and other charitable institutions. Just you can imagine. And the part of the seed money also was given to the documentary which was prepared for Dr. V's life, the founder chairman of. And for the children, Ring of Hope, eye cancers, they took intense pains to donate certain amount to help those patients in spite of their ailments. They were giving so much. And also they created an endowment in the name of Mahima when she passed away in 2008, I think. And from the endowment, they supported patients with visual impairment, low vision aids. And that is the attitude of them. Mano and Mahima have talked to so many of our staff, inspirational meetings and motivation and other areas, talk about how to develop confidence, how to develop motivation, how to fight the errors, and how to transform obstacles into opportunities. That is what he always said, that there may be obstacles, but I must find an opportunity to make use of that obstacle for the benefit of you people. Last appearance was our state conference, Tamil Nadu Ophthalmic Conference. It was unique in that a visually challenged person was asked to as a chief guest for that state conference of 500 ophthalmologists gathered there. He was giving a speech, and that is the unique feature. But he was literally explaining his experience of his illness, how he was coping with it, how anybody can live a beautiful life with all the ailments what he had. And that was an eye-opener for ophthalmologists. 500 ophthalmologists all over the state, and he was just. And only one thing I want to say, that he was often quoted by none other than our former president, Dr. APJ Kalam. One of his visits to Arvind, Dr. Kalam, I presented to him his Mano's first book, Greenwell Years. He has gone through it page to page, and thereafter, he always quotes wherever he went this speech. In his speech, quote Kalam about all the qualities of Mano and how he fought with Mano, visually handicapped. He was not able to see, and Mahima, he was not able to walk because of them, but they were helping each other mutually to help without giving any problem to any others. And this is the confidence, determination for the successful life. And Kalam used to always say that how he was able to draw the towers of the temple and all this with minute details, with geographical, all those things he used to say, and in the meetings itself he used to mention that. So that is the impression he made with everybody. So these are all the qualities of Mano which we are cherishing now at this moment. It is truly gratifying to see all of you here to share your experiences in various facets of his Mano and to pay tributes to Mano. This itself will speak volumes of the profound influence of Mano on us. Thank you very much.
The executive director, Mr. Filipiraj Ravila, and Chitta Filipiraj were actually instrumental in introducing Mano to the Aravind family and gradually enhanced becoming a part of the family. Their first meeting at a felicitation function at the American College, Madurai, about 2.5 decades back, sowed the seed for great bonding that evolved over the years and blossomed into a unique friendship, not with just one person, but with the entire Aravind clan. I invite Mr. Philip to speak a few words.
Good evening, everyone. One can get very easily carried away when one wants to talk about Mano, and I know certainly I will. So I took the discipline myself to write down what I wanted to say. We are an assorted group of people here gathered to celebrate the beautiful life of the person who has brought us all together from different walks of life. We are here to reminisce the life of Mano, a dear friend to all of us on this special day. It happens to be Mano's 59th wedding anniversary. Normally, Chitranda would have called and wished him, but this year it's not to be. One of the multiple facets of our Mano, I want to reflect on one aspect, Mano as a friend. Not all of us could be in his inner circle of friends or family, yet through his books and drawings, he touched the hearts of many. Our introduction to Mano and Mahima happened through his book, Greenwell Years. This was triggered by Chitra's fan mail to him, and I'm sure he must have got many such letters, but somehow something made him respond to Chitra's mail. And our first meeting happened in 1977 at the book launch at the American College. And this friendship grew stronger and stronger over the past 25 years. He and Mahima literally became part of our family. And there hasn't been really any family function or an hospital event without Mano in attendance. Not one of our birthdays or our anniversaries would pass by without Mano personally calling and wishing us. And Mano making his physical presence here is no mean feat, because traveling all the way from Chennai to Madurai is a great challenge for him, given his visual problems. When you are with Mano, he's 100% with you, asking endless questions about everything like a eager child. He knows everything about us. It's not just about, I'm not talking just about Chitra and me, but the entire family. Once a person of great repute, Sir John Wilson, said that at Aravind, it is not a family tree, but a family forest. And Mano knew every tree. Every time we visited him, which was quite often in Chennai, there would be a special column to welcome us with our names in it. He would pamper us with special dishes that he innovated. He made a fabulous pasta and named it after me as Tulsania. I think some of you also he must have given it to you as well. And to make sure that Chitra didn't feel left out, he made a rich dessert and baptized it as Chitrangini. And a preparation in our daughter's Satya's name as baby corn satay. All of this may give an impression that we are super special to Mano, and we certainly feel that way. But everyone who has been close to Mano would feel the same and have similar stories to tell, including the column. No wonder Julian felt compelled to make this trip from Canada during the Christmas weekend to be with us at this event in person. This is another testimony to Mano's depth of friendship. When I say that Mano's loss will be acutely felt, I know that I am not speaking just for myself, but on behalf of the entire extended Aravind family and the larger circle of Mano's friends. Through his friendship, Mano continues to live in each one of us, and probably the greatest tribute to him would be for us to emulate some of his qualities: friendship, compassion, perfection, and most importantly, his contagious love for life. Thank you.
Namaskaram. Namaskaram to everybody here and to everybody who's watching. I can't thank Aravind Eye Care Systems and every one of you, but especially Chitra and Tulasi for all you have done to enrich his life, for your friendship and everything. And it is our honor to be here while you commemorate my father. The four of us thought that we would give one of the facets of Appa, of course, that, I mean, he was a very public, joyous person and shared so much with so many of you. But of course, there are some things that only we as his family would have known. And so we thought we'd share some of those kinds of things. I was completely convinced that there was something in this book, which most of you would know. So I searched for it and realized that that is not something that was in the book. So I thought I'd share it with you. Soon after my mother's accident in 1972, when she was lying first in Jipmer and then in the rehab center at CMC, they went through a tough period, which I was, they kept it hidden from me. But they had previously been at Oberlin College in Ohio, which is where the friendship with Julian, thank you so much for coming, Julian, began. And during that period, they listened to many record albums of international artists. They had Luba music, they had Korean music, they had Judy Collins, which is a fabulous folk American singer, and they listened to it and built up a nostalgia with these songs. And of course, Appa continued to play the vinyl records when we got back to India in September of 1972. And 3 short months later, Amma's accident happened. They were building a beautiful life in India, unlike most Indians who go to the US and end up staying. They were very clear that they wanted to come back to India and bring me up here. And when the accident happened, all those dreams seemed crushed, but their commitment to each other, especially remarkably, my father's commitment to my mother was not only very, very clear, but he wanted to reassure her that he would always be there for her. And he frequently played to her a song of Judy Collins called "Who Knows Where the Time Goes." You may not know this song, and to me, it's all about that era when Amma was recovering in the hospital and before she came back to our house in Santom. I don't have the karaoke accompaniment because I couldn't find the right type of accompaniment, and it's not going to be as beautiful as when Judy Collins sings it with the guitar strumming behind her, but I'm going to attempt to sing it to you, and I want you to follow the words, because every time he played it to her, he was saying that he was going to be there for her, which he did. Until her death in 2008. Across the evening sky, all the birds are leaving. But how can they know it's time for them to go? Before the winter fire, we'll still be dreaming. I have no thought of time. Who knows where the time goes? Who knows where the time goes? Sad, deserted shore, Your fickle friends are leaving. But then you know it's time for them to go. But I will still be here. I have no thought of leaving. I do not count the time. Who knows where the time goes? Who knows where the time goes? And I am not alone while my love is near me. I know it will be so until it's time to go. So come the storms of winter, and then the birds in spring again. I have no fear of time, for who knows how my love grows? Who knows where the time goes? Ah, 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 ah.
1996, on Manohar Devadas's 60th birthday, Mahima Devadas put together a series of albums to commemorate the decades of his life. We recently found and collected select pictures from these albums to show to you, to give a more private view, a more personal taste of the life he lived. Here's my grandfather at the age of 10. Let's see. He's eating some sort of sweet, looking quite mischievous. And then you can see him with a few of his friends walking down from the grand colonnaded steps of his high school, of American College. Sorry. American College. He was born in Madurai in 1936. He lived there for the first 7 years of his life before moving to Kotayur for 2 years and then returning to Madurai, where he would live until 1957. Next slide, please. Thank you. In 1957, he had completed his BS in chemistry from the American College of Madurai, but it was at that time that his father passed away. With the family bereft of any source of income, he had to work for a year at a clerk's office with the local tax department. It was only later that year that he found the job at Standard Batteries that would last through the rest of his working life. In 1969, after his marriage, in 1963 to Mahima Devadas, which was today 59 years ago, he moved to Oberlin College in Ohio in the United States, of which he drew and photographed many scenes. Here you can see the main quadrangle, which he drew in the 1970s. Next slide, please. There he had many new experiences. He would have seen snow for the first time. He went ice skating and wrote an article in the campus newspaper about the experience and characteristically about the chemistry and physics behind it. On the right, you can see a picture of him with his young daughter, my mother, Sujata, in spring at Oberlin College, looking hopefully up at something. We don't know what. Next slide, please. In 1972, after a brief but fruitful detour through Europe, he and his wife and his newborn child and his 6-year-old child, returned to Santhome, to the ancestral home of the Devadas family that had been built 36 years previously. Here we can see a sketch of his of the sights he saw in Europe. It was a truly wonderful and mind-expanding experience for all involved. On the right, we can see St. Thomas Cathedral, which our family still attends to this day, as it would have seemed in those early years. But in 1972, the full bloom of their young lives was tragically cut by the tragic accident of December of that year, which cast a pall on the next year, but his indomitable spirit remained, and the family would soldier through. Next slide, please. Through all of these difficulties, he continued to produce great art. He was exhibited repeatedly in the late 70s and 80s, particularly at Max Müller-Broven, at the American Cultural Center, and many other galleries, both in Chennai and in other cities in India, and even, I believe, at some points in the United States. Much of the proceeds from this art would go to furnish funds for various charities, including endowments dedicated to Aravind Eye Hospital. In 1996, Mahima Devadas estimated that up to that point, 17,000 cards had been sold and the proceeds directed to this hospital. Next slide, please. Here we can see invitations to one of his exhibits where he was exhibited along various very famous contemporary Indian artists. And on the right, something more personal, a recipe he drew for my mother, then living abroad with my father, for a mushroom soup. Next slide, please. And this all culminated in 2020, but really 2021, when he received the Padma Shri Award for his great work and contributions in all of these varied fields. Next slide, please. And there's him, kind of as a goodbye. Final slide, please. And I just wanted to leave you all with this quote from the ancient Greek poet Pindar, who wrote in the 6th century BC. He says, "Creatures of a day, what is anyone? What is anyone not? A dream of a shadow is our mortal being. But when there comes to men a gleam of splendor given of heaven, then rests on them a light of glory, and blessed are their days." From heaven he received both misfortune and an undeniable gleam of splendor, but his days were all the more blessed for both of them.
I'm going to say a few words about my grandfather. I definitely can't deliver a speech as well as my brother or any of the other people here who have delivered speeches. And I don't really even know how to start a speech about my grandfather. So I'm going to try and keep it a little short. I think that by this point, we all know that he was a towering figure, an inspiring figure. We know what he went through and what he was able to achieve. And I think that with him and with anyone who ultimately passes, it's really important to remember what they did on a smaller scale, to not let their actions overshadow their personality. As much as he was Manohar Devadas, artist, writer, and inspirational figure, he was also my grandfather, my mother's father, my dad's father-in-law, and my brother's grandfather. And for many of you, he played the role of a colleague, a friend, or both. He was perpetually funny, kind, loving, and caring to people. And I think that that is what he should be remembered for. Though his death is without a doubt a tragedy, I think that what he would have wanted us to do now is to learn a lesson from it and ask ourselves important questions. Who do we want to be remembered as? Are our actions truly worthy of respect or remembrance? And most importantly, how can we better the lives of those around us? Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to share one reading of a vignette from multiple facets of my Madurai. But before I do, for myself, for Suja, for Caitlin, and for Ethan, and for the family, I want to say a special thanks to Tulsi Raj and to Chitra and to everyone at Arvind for making not just this evening possible, but for making such a difference in so many lives, including our lives, but particularly in my father-in-law's life. And I want to assure Tulsi Raj that yes, everyone was special and he treated everyone special, but you and Chitra were really special. And your friendship, your personalities, your values made such a difference to him and to us. And what you and what everyone here is at Arvind is doing for Madurai, for Tamil Nadu, for the world, meant so much to him. And as someone who was unceasingly proud of being from Madurai, knowing that there was such a center of excellence here in his hometown that people all over the world talked about, was something that he was incredibly proud of. And so thank you for all of that. And maybe I didn't choose this as proof of how special you all were to him, but in fact, it comes through in this reading. It's the last story he tells in multiple facets of my Madurai. And Suja and I thought it was particularly appropriate as a reading at a memorial for him. One early morning in mid-January 2002, my friends Tulsi and Chitra took me on a drive to the outskirts of Madurai, north of Nattam. Tulsi stopped the car on an open country road, observing that perhaps it was a good place to watch the break of dawn. We stepped out of the car when the sky was still as dark as ink to enjoy the cool, bracing weather of this winter morning. The outer firmament began to lighten towards the east, and I could perceive, a minute or so after the other two, a silhouette of Yanaimalai, Elephant Hill. The shape of the hill became well defined as the eastern sky grew brighter. Then the sun rose. By sheer chance, from where we stood, we saw the sunrise right above the head of Yanaimalai. For a moment, it was like the coronation of the Elephant King of Madurai, as the hill briefly wore a glowing crown of pure gold. The paddy fields stretching right in front of us had a deep emerald color in the yellow morning light. Rows of coconut trees lining the fields, as well as distant palmyra trees, stood silently immobile, seeming to watch the crowning ceremony. Even the long bands of clouds embroidering the sky here and there remained motionless. It seemed to us that time too stood still. This was the first time ever that I had been to this part of rural Madurai and looked at Yanaimalai from the other side, so to speak. I was pleased that I could visually grasp this serene yet glorious view. I felt happy that I could share this moment of peace and perfect harmony with the couple I have grown so fond of. But what gladdened my heart the most was that the placid rural beauty of this region, not far from the crowded city of Madurai, had remained unspoiled. Now, with the drawing completed in March 2002 and presented here, I bring this portfolio to its end. The drawings in the book have been arranged neither in chronological nor in strict topical order. Rather, the illustrations have been carefully sequenced according to the dictates of my heart. To end the book, I have chosen a drawing of a scene at dawn rather than at dusk. Perhaps this illustrates the hope for the dawn of a new era in the ancient city of Madurai. On a personal level too, in the evening of my life, with darkness creeping into my eyes like nightfall, the breaking of dawn symbolizes my hope for a new beginning, rather than the end of my creative activities.
Thank you all so much. So beautifully combined. As much as Mano has been proud of Madurai, we yet utterly feel that the privilege and honor to have been associated with Mano. We intend the spirit of our daily life. Associated with the Study Center for Indian Literature and English Translation at the American College, Madurai, it is Ramya Paul, one of Mano's closest friends, and the best critic of his work. And I invite Ramya Paul to speak with you.
friends, I have spoken about Mano, the Mahi-Mano combo, in several occasions, at different locations. But it has always been about their resilience, their positivity, and also their radiant love for life, love for people. But now that his absence begins to sink in, the focus changes. It seems to be about us, our loss, and a life without Mano in Skillet, without his 10:30 routine phone calls in Skillet, and also the late night reading sessions that I used to regularly have with him. Mano loved the American college. It was an obsessive kind of love for the college. And he used to have such elated, lofty thoughts. He used to praise the college in such lofty terms that I used to tease him that all those statements were born out of an unconditional love, a near familial love for the college. It was a proud proclamation of a very loyal alumnus. And he used to talk about the architectural marvels that beg to be conserved. No, he kind of immortalized them in yet another art form. And the lines tug at the heartstrings of every American college student or teacher. And they continue to adorn the mementos that the college started preparing when we celebrated the 125th year. Julian and Mano, we always say that you can take them out of Madurai, but you cannot take Madurai out of Julian or Mano. You know, American college used to be not just a physical landscape for them. It was more a cultural landscape and even an emotional landscape for them. And Mano was so thrilled that Julian could play such an important role in the planning of the satellite campus. And he was so proud of the foresight of Dr. Samuel Sudananda and his team and Julian's own vision. He was excited like a little kid each time he would think about the landmark of the college. Mano was just a name for me for a long, long time, almost a vibrant character in American college narratives. He became a reality with the launch of his very first book, Greenwell Years in Skillet. And all that I had heard about him came to be true. Mainly the ability to laugh at himself. I remember when the book Poem to Courage was launched, J. Vasantan, another artist, he made a statement, Mahima is a real beauty, remarkable beauty. And he turned to Mano and said, I wish I could say that about Mano. And Mano burst out laughing. And he loved it. Mano used to love all these labels about him. When he was growing up as a little kid, he was referred to as a Potayan, mainly because of his love for columns. And as he became an adult, he was referred to as a Katan. And he loved that as well. But of all the labels that were given to him, what he loved the most was bear, Mano the bear. He loved it. And compulsively, he'll talk about this bear image in every speech. And I used to tell him before he began speeches, Mano, not this time, but he just wouldn't listen. But he was so pleased when Chitra and Tulasi brought out the book Notes from a Bear to His Butterfly. Skillet used to be the launch pad of his books, at least the first 3 or 4 of them, till Tulasi and Chitra hijacked Mano from us and made Mano their own family member. We have absolutely no resentment at all, because we could not have created the remarkable support system, professional support system that you have given him, and also making Aravind his home. I sincerely thank the whole Aravind family, Chitra and Tulasi Raj particularly, for enhancing the very quality of Mano's life. Mano became an ambassador of Skillet. In 2004, he established a Mahima Devadas Prize for students who excelled in creative writing. And we have so far given 40 prizes to students over the 18 years. I used to be his proofreader for the text that he wrote. Eventually, I graduated to be a reader of different newspaper articles, and also articles that appeal to him and me from different magazines. And this was something that started in the late 90s, and it went on till 3 days before his death. And I have mentioned it to Tulasi and Chitra, I bet. In the year 2007, Dr. Nachyar was invited to give the convocation address in the American College. Just a few days later, Dr. Nambar Sami was invited to give the convocation address in Tyagaraja College. And the newspapers, Tamil and English newspapers, they were competing with each other, giving, presenting one photograph over another. These two people in fancy, attractive gowns, and also projecting the contents of one convocation address over another. And during the weekend, Mano made me read these reports over and over again. We would compare the versions and then get into a hilarious discussion of gender balance and domestic peace. And, everything about Aravind Hospital, Mano needed to know. And whether it's a rare honor that Dr. Kim received from Canada or Google, or some great recognition from Buckingham Palace for Dr. Prajna, and the string of awards that Dr. Aravind and Tulasi Raj used to just, pick up. It used to be a habit with them picking up different awards, but every detail, you'll have to read them to him in the morning. And also I'll have to preserve the paper so that it could be read again at night. And members of Skillet team, Ebenezer, Pavitra, and particularly Somasundaram, would immediately rush to the shops and get 2 copies, because Mano would want them to be mailed to him immediately. It has to be sent by courier. I don't know why 2 hard copies, one for future reference and the other to show off to his Chennai friends. And he'll say, just in case it doesn't appear in the Chennai edition. The same thing we had to do about M.S. Swaminathan's family also. Whether it's an article by Soumya on or by her, and also Madhura's article. And I had a tendency to skip all statistical data and chemical terms, but he wouldn't let me. I think you have left out one line. I think you have to go back, repeat it. I'll say, I don't understand the term. He'll say, but I will understand it, because, his subject is chemistry. And 2 favorite writers that he had, T.J.S. George, his point of view column, which was recently stopped after 2 long decades. And another favorite writer was Gopal Krishna Gandhi. He loved Gopal Krishna Gandhi as a writer and also as a person. And Skillet folks will know, we have preserved a number of his articles as hard copies near the telephone, because he'll ask us to read that particular article at any moment. for easy availability. The date it was published was 20 January 2020, and the title is What Abide With Me Means to India. It was written in anxiety when that music was, they were threatening to withdraw the music from the beating retreat ceremony. It was Gandhi's favorite hymn. It was also Mano's favorite hymn. And many of you would have heard him play that music on his harmonica to people. Once, when Paul passed away, he wanted to thank the doctors, and he read the lyric, made me read the lyric, and he played that one stanza to them, and the doctor's eyes went moist. And recently, Dr. PTR became his big favorite after 2 visits by his family. And I had to give, condense his different memorial lectures, endowment lectures, and also the Oxford Union debate and all that, and read to him. Mano is the kind of person who was so grateful for every small or big gesture. Whether it's Joan, Tirupura Sundari, Sheila, Carolyn, Grace, Anuja, Rishwan, Swarna, we know all about you, even though we haven't met some of you. We were meeting them for the first time when we attended the funeral. But we felt that we had all known them for ages. And he is so grateful to Mary Masulamani for continuing the long telephonic conversation that he used to have with Diwakar. And he was also very proud of Rachel and, of course, Pavitra. He was in awe of Pavitra. She's an all-time favorite. Okay? But when he talks about his friends in general, and it's a string of friends, many of them, most of them women, and he would always talk about them in superlatives. Okay, I have enormous love for that person, and she's extremely fond of me. That's the way he'll always say, special, special, special. But you shouldn't get carried away by that, because you're just one of the many, 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 many special people. And people like me who have very strong likes and dislikes, it is very hard for me personally to transcend binary perceptions. And Manohar's love for people, I used to tell him, you're pretty indiscreet. It is beyond my understanding. And I also used to tell him, Mano, whatever you may preach to me, love all for me is a mere score call. 0-0 in racket games, that's it. And he has experienced very few instances of insensitivity as well as betrayal. But you can see that as he narrates those incidents to you, it will get out of his system. He'll be completely cleansed of the bitterness. He can iron out negatives. And just as I start harboring resentment on his behalf, he would be looking for some redeeming quality in that person. And I'll be furious, And his refusal to judge people because of just one unkind word or one unkind action or word. He is so noble. And he used to swear that trace of nobility came to him because of Mahima. And, when you judge others, you don't define that person, you define yourself. And by refraining from, judging others, you tend to refine your own value system. And my God, he was so proud of his grandchildren, Ethan and Aniketan, because of their keen sensitivity and their intellectual curiosity. He saw a combination of the very best of the East and West in them. And he was so pleased with the parenting style of Suja and Michael. But at the same time, the last line would be, but it is their own, the grandchildren, their own inherent goodness too. It is their own attribute too. not just Suja's and Michael's. And he has started recording little anecdotes from his childhood for them. He wanted to write more and more, but he could not. Mano has a phenomenal memory for dates and anniversaries. When just 2 days before Dr. Peter Jayapandian passed away, he used to call him Pedro very fondly. And he knew that it was his birthday. He called him and was very sad that the response was very, very poor. And 3 days before Mano passed away, he called me to tell me how dearly he missed Nayarji. And he said, I can't believe 2 years have gone past. And exactly 3 days later, on Nayarji's death anniversary, I heard that Mano also passed away. And I knew that Mano and Nayarji used to share a number of jokes. I just couldn't understand why they were giggling so much. They'll begin a sentence and then burst out laughing, begin another sentence and burst out laughing. Like little teenagers, teenagers or whatever. Anyway, I just couldn't understand that. But the friends who could share so many jokes, they could share the death anniversary also. In the memorial service that we had for Nayarji, his daughter, smiling through her tears, reminded us, say not in grief that he is no more, but in thankfulness that he was. Say not in grief that he is no more, but in thankfulness that he was. Grief is the price that we all pay for our love. We can't direct the wind, but we can adjust the sails. We all have to seek fulfillment in the fact that we have had such a noble, such a unique friend, Mano, in all our lives. We are all shaped by absences. Absences become a constant presence, and it is that presence which I hope will abide with all of us. Thank you very much.
Julian Smith is a world-renowned consultant architect for many firms in Europe, Canada, and USA. He lived on the American College campus for 2 years in the late 60s and early 70s. He fell in love with the Indian culture and South Indian temples. So it is in Mano's own Madurai that Julian found his vocation in architecture. Madurai continues to live in him. But this unbelievable gesture of love, traveling all the way from Canada to be part of this event, is an expression of Julian's personality. May I invite him to speak a few words?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you to Suja and Michael, to Aravind, Chitra, to Skillet, to Premala, for bringing together Madurai and Mano and Aravind and Skillet. It just, as people have said, it's so fitting. I want to start by talking about Citibank, which is one of the largest banks in the US. So you may ask why. They were a very successful bank, and the banking industry in the US used to attract the best and the brightest of the Ivy League graduates, and they had special recruiting sessions for them. And it got to where more than 50% of those graduates would end up working for the big banks or Wall Street or the management consulting business, extremely well paid. And then in the end of the 20th century, the beginning of the 21st century, they began to lose those people who were finding that even though they were well paid, they were rather soulless jobs. And so Citibank was worried, and their percentage of the graduates of the Ivy League colleges went from about more than 50% to less than 20%. And this was really troubling for them.
And their motto was something like, I don't know exactly what it was, but it was something like get rich with Citibank. So they changed their motto, and their new motto was live richly with Citibank. And because they found that the largest group of these graduates who didn't go into the banking and management system were going into the nonprofit world and working on projects that really brought them satisfaction, but were often not that well paid. They were working for institutions that might be financially unstable. But they wanted to experience the world. They didn't want a static status of what their wealth was. They wanted something about experience. And so Citibank tried their best. Well, the motto, live richly, obviously Citibank had no idea what that meant. They weren't in the business of living richly. They were in the business of getting rich, and for themselves at least, and hopefully some of their clients. But I remember at the time, I thought, live richly is a pretty nice motto. It may have nothing to do with Citibank. And so Mano, to me, is an extraordinary person because he lived richly in a way that I have never seen in anyone else. And he did it so continuously and so creatively and so wisely, and yet so completely self-consciously, that I've just never seen anything quite like that. And some people can attribute that to the love affair with Mahima, which took this country boy from Madurai and brought him together in a magical relationship with this beautiful, talented, well-educated art historian, a kind of dream, and yet they fell in love. And it seemed to me that that love brought such a richness to his life that he could spend it living richly. There was so much richness there for him to live on. But I think we also have to remember that Mahima had her choices. She didn't have to choose Mano, and she did choose Mano. And I think she chose him because she knew that she wanted to live richly. And this was the person that she was going to do it with. And all I can say about Mahima is she obviously had a very good sense of judgment. Betsy and I met Mano and Mahima and a magical 5-year-old Suja at Oberlin, where Mahima had become the director of Asia House, which was right in the middle of the Oberlin campus. And you have to remember, this is in the 60s and 70s, being an administrator in a college like Oberlin was not an easy position, because young people in those days were saying, well, the mantra was don't trust anyone over 30. They were very suspicious of administrators of organizations of the military industrial complex, all those things that the 60s and 70s were about. And Mano and Mahima were in their early 30s. So they were in this strange position. And the previous director of Asia House was, and you saw a picture of it there. I'm very glad that you showed that in your images. It's residences, and then it's these activity rooms where Asia House would put on events, rooms like this. And the previous director had a residence, which was her private apartment in Asia House. And then there were these places where you had the activities. Mahima became the director, and for her, that difference between a residence and activity place ceased to exist. For her, life was just about living richly, and it was about Mano, and it was about Suja. So their apartment became as much the heart of Asia House, and it started with, I think, cooking lessons in their kitchen of South Indian cuisine for curious Oberlin students. But what I wanted to say is that the Oberlin community really fell in love with Mano, with Mahima, with Suja, and what they brought. And at a time when the Oberlin students had managed to sort of get rid of a president that they didn't like, the principal of the college, But this was a different way of living. It was a way of living richly, of being open. And that apartment, which was right at the end of the hall, became not just a place of events, but it became a place where students would go for celebrations, but then even further, students who were in trouble or needed someone to talk to. And what I wanted to say was that that way of living richly continued when they moved to Chennai. And that house in Santome became, again, completely indistinguishable, I think, in the Chennai landscape, with the places where the Madras Book Club would meet or where there would be Carnatic music concerts. Their house was simply another place where that community of Chennai and of people from Madurai who would be in Chennai, and people from Canada who would be in Chennai, people from anywhere in the world who were in Chennai could go for physical nourishment. And as has been said, Mano would be so delighted to talk about the dish he'd made for you, especially, and the ingredients he'd put into it. And it was also intellectual nourishment. It was spiritual nourishment. And that place carried on exactly what they'd done at Oberlin, which was a place where everyone felt at home, where there was the sort of distinctions we have, the hierarchies in society, which are so intrinsic to the way we live, simply disappeared. When Mano died, Betsy wrote a message to our 4 boys. And I just want to read you what the youngest said. So the only time he was in that house, he was 7 years old, and it was Suja's wedding. We brought the 4 boys to Chennai for that wedding. And so this is Lincoln, his name is. Since I was so young at the time, I have very few clear memories from our trip to India. Nonetheless, the most potent and meaningful is one of simply being in their home and feeling like it was a very special place and like we were in the presence of very, very special people. It is not a long memory, and on the surface involves my happiness at being able to get hot chocolate, I think. But the reason that has stayed with me and floats into my consciousness every now and then again, even after all of these years, probably decades, is because of the way my heart and spirit were impacted. There was a unique kind of love there. This is that touched the soul, that could be felt so deeply. My heart breaks for you and Dad and all of their loved ones. So that was about living richly. But the other thing that amazes me about Mano and the way he lived his life was that he wanted others to live richly. And it's one thing to want that for yourself, to figure out how you can live that rich life, how you can be part of the music scene in Chennai, or play the harmonica and be part of Kentucky bluegrass. I mean, it's to be part of the world, but to commit yourself to saying, this isn't just for me. I want everyone to live richly. And for that, I want to start with another story of another 7-year-old, and that was Suja when she was 7. Betsy and I came to Chennai very soon after Mahima's accident. And we went to the house, and I said to Mano, when we flew into Chennai, we flew right over a small village, and it was very beautiful. It had the temple tank, it had the large tree that defined the center of this village. And I said it was such a beautiful image of a just a little village in Tamil Nadu. And Mano said, let's get in the car and go and find it. And I said, well, I have no idea where it is. So he asked, where we'd come from. He calculated the probable path of the airplane and figured out the height at which a plane would descend and where a village like that would become very evident. And we piled into the car with Suja and Betsy, and we went, and sure enough, eventually we just headed off northeast and eventually found this village. And so Mano and I were drawing, and I said to Suja, why don't you do a drawing? She had a beautiful set of colored pens that I'm sure her parents had given her. And so she went off. And we got back into the car, and as we were going back, she gave me this drawing and said, this is a gift for you. And I looked at it. And the drawing showed the tank. It was a beautiful sort of mental drawing of the place and the tree. And there was a thing in the corner, which I had no idea what it was. It was just kind of a lump like this with little bumps on the bottom. And I looked at it and I realized she saw something that I didn't even know was there, which was the temple cart completely covered up because it wasn't the festival season. It wasn't visible, but just the little bottoms of the wheels were visible. And I thought the reason this 7-year-old girl knows that's there and that's what it is because she lives in this cultural landscape. And that word was mentioned of the cultural landscape we inhabit. And I was an architecture student then, and I was very interested in this idea of how we experience or live in a cultural landscape. And I thought, this is why you can't observe a cultural landscape. You have to experience it. It's not something that's visible. It's something that's in your heart, that is in your soul. And Suja knew there was a temple cart there because she grew up in a place where that helps give meaning to a place. And I was simply observing it and saying, it's a beautiful looking tank and it's a beautiful looking tree. And I was a student then, and I began to think about that. But what I want to tie back to Mano is that I think Mano spent his life telling us that we live in an environment which is so rich, and it would just help us if we saw what we have around us, what our cultural landscapes are, how amazing they are. 2 months after we met Mano and Mahima, we were in Oberlin. Betsy and I took them up to our cottage we had a little summer cabin at the end of a long dirt road through the forest on a lake in Ontario, unheated, a little wood stove. And we took them there for the holiday weekend. And on our way back, Mano asked to stop the car. He got out, took a photograph, and got back in. And when we got back to Oberlin, a few days later, he gave us a large print of that photo. And it was beautiful. It was so beautiful that Betsy immediately had it framed, and we put it up in our kitchen. We had 4 boys, and Betsy spent a lot of time cooking and baking. And for 51 years, that picture has been the center of our kitchen, and we see it every single day. And it was that photo, because I knew Mano was a chemist. I knew he was friends with some of these chemistry professors who he became very close friends with and maintained contact with. But that was when I realized what an artist he was. But what I realized later was that he didn't take that photograph to show us what a good photographer he was. Because the photo is, we have these forests that are in intense green of the summers, and in the fall they turn this brilliant collage of yellows and oranges and reds. And that's what he took with the little road winding through it. He wanted us to see that. He wanted us to know, you are lucky. You live in a place that is this rich. And I'm just letting you know that. And I think that's what he did with all his drawings. He didn't just draw the beautiful buildings with their intricate details, which he thought we should understand those details. He would draw one of these drawings we saw here with that thing where the merchants would offer a free drink to anyone who came by. Yet another beautiful drawing of the bridge by the railway station, Madurai, where a little boy could stand and watch the steam engines underneath him pushing the boxcars around. Just to say, we live as little boys growing up in a place that has such richness in it. And if you look at my drawings and appreciate them, you can live richly too. The last thing I did with Mano, I was in Chennai. He was working on one of his last drawings at the point where he had to be an inch from the paper with a magnifying glass to even see the lines he was doing. And he was doing a drawing of the Pudu Mandapam. And there was a detail that he couldn't get because he had these photographs and it was a dark corner. And so he asked me when I was in Madurai to go to the Pudu Mandapam and draw a pen and ink drawing of that corner in full scale so that he could get it accurately. And so I was happy to do that. I went to the Pudu Mandapam and I was doing this drawing and I thought, this is crazy because Mano could fudge this detail. Nobody is ever going to know that it's not exactly accurate. And I realized that for Mano, 400 years ago, some stonemasons had put blood and sweat and tears and beauty and skill into creating that carving. And that's what he wanted. He wanted us to know that. And he wanted us not to appreciate the richness of his drawing. He wanted us to appreciate the richness of the Pudu Mandapam and to go and appreciate that. So to me, that's extraordinary. And I'll never know someone like that again. And may he rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian, for excavating and bringing out the richness of their lives to light today. Dr. Sahitya and her low vision clinic have played a great role in helping Mano, training him on the use of various low vision aids. The endowment he instituted at Aravind is being utilized to support patients with low vision, a project which he held so close to his heart. May I invite Dr. Sahitya to share a few words.
Good evening, everyone. I've had the privilege of sharing a few moments with Manohar sir, a man of remarkable strength, someone who could transform disability to excellence. He was the first person who set up a fund for our low vision clinic, or our vision rehab center as we call it today. So we started using that fund to provide low vision devices and training to persons with vision impairment who couldn't afford them. Low vision devices are way too pricey as compared to a price of spectacles, and you don't have a lot of, say, government backing or insurance that covers these devices. Only when we started with his funding, we were able to provide these devices and rehabilitative trainings to a lot of patients, and till date, with his endowment fund across all our centers, numerous beneficiaries, people with vision impairment, starting from 0 years of age until across all ages are being benefited by this fund. And more than just money, there's always this thing with Mano sir. Whenever he used to visit us, he used to call me, Flora, and anyone who's in the team and used to ask us, how are you? How is your family? Are you all happy? Do you have any problems? Do you have any difficulties? Are you happy doing this job? Are you happy treating patients? Are you frustrated? He'll always ask every single time he sees us, he'll ask us. And then he'll tell, you'll not leave the department, no? Because I'm a pediatric ophthalmologist, I work with the pediatric clinic. I come also to the low vision. So he'll always tell, you'll not leave and go, right? You'll not go elsewhere. You'll not go to another specialty. You'll always stay here, right? He'll always keep asking. Initially, when he did that, I never understood. And then I realized that it's not just the giver or the receiver who's happy. He wanted every link in that chain to be happy. You can give money, you can get a device. But if the person who's giving it to you is going to sulk or be angry or not transfer that compassion, he thought that that is not what he wanted. He wanted that hope, that kindness, that compassion that he was giving to go through all of us with the same intensity. That's when I realized there's a difference between donating and serving. And that's what he taught us. And every time he comes there, even at the age of 80 years, he wanted to learn computers, NVDA softwares. Initially, he used to ask, what is new? What has come? What is a recent advance? And then we used to show him all the devices. I never thought he'd be interested in learning. He always had people around him. People were ready to help him, read out to him and all that. But then he'll tell, no, I learned keyboard. I learned computers. At 80 years of age, he used to sit in the department and like a small boy, he used to memorize shortcut keys. He used to keep telling it himself and then he used to practice. And those kids and young adults, college goers, those kids, when they see him, they'll feel so inspired. Sometimes they'll come and help him. And then it was a source of inspiration. They were all happy. Usually patients who come there come with a lot of grief. They come in a lot of denial. And for those, say, 5 or 6 hours that he was training in the department, those kids used to actually laugh and, be happy, because whenever he says a wrong shortcut key, they used to be like, no, that is wrong. And then everybody used to laugh and then they used to train again. He got trained in NVDA. He used the recent applications. He had these smartphone options. Every new technology that was there, he was like this enthusiastic small school kid who wanted everything, and he wanted everything for everyone. That was the difference with him. He always made sure that everyone got everything. He'll always say, why are you training only young children in this? Get the 60-year-old also to learn computers. And when he learned NVDA, we did it across all ages. Now it goes on from 5 years to 60 years, 70 years. You have a computer, don't have a computer, learn everything, take everything. Maybe you'll do something with it. So that's how it was. He was there to inspire us, to break our mental barriers. And every person that he came in touch with could feel his kindness and hope in abundance. Today, our rehabilitation team, whatever or how much ever our rehabilitation center has grown, it owes a lot to him. And today's VRC stands as a proud witness to his optimism, his compassion, and his hope. And we'll make sure that we carry his spirit. The team VRC and our center would carry his spirit forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Sahitya. Now we'll have somebody speak on the Zoom. A Tamil professor at the American College, Madurai, and the founder of Kaleidoscope Center for Alternate Education, penned the soulful lyrics of the musical biography of Mano titled Mahima. A passionate music enthusiast, Mano loved reminiscing each and every stage of the song's development and kept cherishing it. May I request Mr. Prabhakaran to join?
Hello.
You are audible, sir. You can go ahead.
Okay. அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். இந்த ஒரு அருமையான தினத்தில் நண்பர்களோடு சேர்ந்து.
Excuse me, sir. உங்க வீடியோ ஆன் பண்ணிக்கிறீங்களா, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
அது அதுல ஏதோ ப்ராப்ளம் இருக்குன்னு நினைக்கிறேன்.
சரி, sir. You can speak, sir.
Okay. நண்பர்களே, மனோ அவர்களுடைய இந்த நினைவேந்தல் கூட்டம் என்பது ஒரு வழக்கமான ஒரு இரங்கல் கூட்டம் போல நான் நினைக்கவில்லை. ஏற்கனவே பல நண்பர்கள் சொன்னது போல இது ஒரு மனோவினுடைய ஒரு நிறைவான வாழ்க்கையை கொண்டாடுகிற, அவருடைய அனுபவங்களை பகிர்ந்து கொண்ட நாம் எல்லாம் சேர்ந்து அவருடைய நினைவுகளை கொண்டாடுகிற ஒரு நாளாகவே நான் இதை கருதுகிறேன். அவருடைய 80வது பிறந்த தினத்தை முன்னிட்டு அரவிந்த் நண்பர்கள் ஒரு சிறிய கொண்டாட்டத்தை கூட்டத்தை ஏற்பாடு செய்திருந்தார்கள். அப்பொழுதுதான் நான் மனோ அவர்களை கொஞ்சம் அருகிலிருந்து கவனிக்கக்கூடிய வாய்ப்பு பெற்றேன். நண்பர் சனிலும் நானும் சேர்ந்து ஒரு சிறு பாடலை அவருக்காக உருவாக்கினோம். அந்த பாடல் முடிந்தவுடன் அந்த பாடல்ல ஒரு வரி வரும். வெளிச்சங்கள் என் வாழ்வில் வெளியே இல்லை, ஆனாலும் இருளை நான் பார்த்ததில்லை என்ற ஒரு வரி. அத மனோ அவர்கள் ரொம்ப சிலாகித்தார். வழக்கமா மனோ அவர்கள் எப்பயுமே உணர்ச்சி வசப்பட மாட்டார். அவருடைய அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு நிலையை நம்ம பார்த்திருக்க முடியாது. ஆனா நான் அந்த பாட்டுக்கு அப்புறம் நான் ரொம்ப உணர்ச்சி வசப்பட்டேன் என்று என்னோடு அதை பகிர்ந்து கொண்டார். உண்மையிலேயே அவர்கிட்ட நான் ரொம்ப அவர்கிட்ட ரொம்ப ஆச்சரியப்பட்ட ஒரு விஷயம் என்னவென்றால், பாரதியாருடைய ஒரு வரி எனக்கு நினைவில் இருக்கு. உள்ளத்தில் உண்மை ஒளி உண்டாயின் வாக்கினிலே ஒளி உண்டாகும் ஒரு வார்த்தை இருக்கு. நம்முடைய உள்ளத்துல இருக்கக்கூடிய, நான் இந்த இடத்துல அதை தெளிவுன்னு நான் புரிஞ்சுக்கிறேன். மனோ அவர்களுக்கு அவருடைய அவ்வளவு பிரச்சனைகளுக்கிடையும் அவருக்கு ஒரு தெளிவு இருந்தது. வாழ்க்கையை பற்றி அவருக்கான ஒரு தத்துவத்தை அவர் உருவாக்கி கொண்டார். அதன் வழியாக அவர் நம்மளை தொட்டார்னு நினைக்கிறேன். அதனால அவர் என்னைக்குமே அவர் சுற்றிலும் இருந்தவர்களை அவர் ஒரு மகிழ்ச்சியையும் ஒரு நம்பிக்கையும் தான் கடத்திருக்காரு. அது என்னைக்குமே அவர்கிட்ட நான் இன்னைக்கும் நினைத்து பார்ப்பதுண்டு. இரண்டாவதாக, மிகப்பெரிய கலைஞர்களை பொறுத்தளவுல உலகம் முழுவதும் எவ்வளவோ கலைஞர்கள் இருக்கிறார்கள். அவர்களுடைய கலைக்கும் அவருடைய வாழ்க்கைக்கும் ரொம்ப நெருங்கிய தொடர்பு இருக்குன்னு சொல்ல முடியாது. பல நேரங்களில் உலகத்தையே சிரிக்க வைத்த சாப்ளின் ஒரு மோசமான பெற்றோராக இருந்ததாக சொல்வார்கள். இப்படி எத்தனையோ உதாரணங்கள் இருக்கு. பெரிய கலைஞர்கள் மிக ஒரு நல்ல கணவர்களாகவோ அல்லது சக மனிதர்களாகவோ கூட இருக்க முடியாத அளவுக்கு இருந்தவர்கள் எல்லாம் உண்டு. ஆனா மனோ அவருடைய ஓவியங்களுக்கும் அவருடைய வாழ்க்கைக்கும் ஒரு பெரிய தொடர்பை நான் பார்த்தேன். அவருடைய ஓவியங்கள் இருக்கக்கூடிய ஒரு மேத்தமெட்டிக்கல் பெர்ஃபெக்ஷன். அவர் ஒரு புராதன கட்டடங்களை ரொம்ப எளிதாக அதை ஒப்பிட்டு பார்த்து விடுவோம் நம்ம. அப்படி இருக்கும்போது அவர் அதுல ஒரு துல்லியமான பெர்ஃபெக்ஷனுக்காக அவர் ரொம்ப மெனக்கெட்டார். அந்த காலத்துல டாவின்சி போன்ற ஓவியர்கள் பிணங்களை அறுத்து பார்த்து அதிலிருந்து மனித அனாட்டமியை புரிந்து கொண்டு ஓவியங்கள் வரைந்ததாக சொல்வார்கள். அது மாதிரி மனோவுடைய ஓவியங்கள் இருக்கிற துல்லியம், அந்த துல்லியம் அவர்கிட்ட இருந்த அந்த ஒரு சயின்டிபிக் ஒரு அப்ரோச் அவருடைய வாழ்க்கையிலையும் இருந்ததுன்னு சொல்லலாம். அவருடைய துணைவியாரை அவர் பாதுகாத்து கொண்டு இருந்த அந்த காலத்துல அவர் எப்படி அந்த நோயை பற்றி படித்து அந்த கண்டிஷனை புரிஞ்சுக்கிட்டு அவர்களை எவ்வளவு காலம் அவர் பராமரித்தார் என்பதை படிக்கும்போது உண்மையிலேயே ஆச்சரியமா இருக்கும். அவர் அவருடைய ஒவ்வொரு புள்ளியும் ஒவ்வொரு கோடும் அவருடைய சொந்த வாழ்க்கையில் அவர் ஏதோ ஒரு விதத்துல பயன்படுத்தக்கூடியதாக இருந்தது அப்படிங்கிறத நான் பார்க்கிறேன். அவருக்கு எப்பயுமே எந்த குழப்பமும் இல்லை. பொதுவாக அவர் ஒரு இறை நம்பிக்கையாளர் தான், அப்படித்தான் நான் நினைக்கிறேன். ஆனாலும் அவர் அதை பொதுவாக இறை நம்பிக்கை இருக்கும்போது எனக்கு ஏன் இது நடக்குது, எனக்கு மட்டும்தான் நடக்கணுமா என்ற கேள்விகள் அவர்கிட்ட என்னைக்கு இருந்த மாதிரி தெரியல. வாட் நெக்ஸ்ட் அப்படின்ட்டு அந்த வாழ்க்கையை எதிர்கொண்டு அந்த பிரச்சனைகளை ஒரு தூரமா தள்ளி வைக்கக்கூடிய அவருடைய அந்த அப்ரோச் ரொம்ப ஆச்சரியமான ஒரு விஷயம். அவர் ஒரு பக்கத்துல ரொம்ப ஒரு நவீனமான ஒரு மனிதராக இருந்தாலும் கூட அவருக்கு பழமையின் மேலையும் பாரம்பரியத்தின் மேல இருந்த காதல், அவர் மதுரை நகர் முழுவதையும் அவர் தன்னுடைய கோடுகளால் ஆவணப்படுத்தி இருக்கிற விதம் நமக்கு ரொம்ப ஒரு ஆச்சரியப்படத்தக்க ஒரு விஷயம். கடைசி அவருக்கு பற்றி நான் சொல்லணும்னு விரும்பினது அவருடைய அவர் ஒரு கிறிஸ்தவராக இருந்தும் கூட, நானும் ஒரு கிறிஸ்தவன் தான், அவர் தன்னை எரியூட்டுவதற்கு ஒப்பு கொடுத்தது என்பது அவருக்கு வாழ்க்கை மேல இருந்த ஒரு பெரிய அது பல செய்திகளை எனக்கு சொல்லக்கூடியதாக இருந்தது. எப்படி தன்னுடைய இருப்பை ரொம்ப ஒரு எளிதாக கடந்து போகக்கூடிய ஒரு மனிதனாக, இயற்கையோடு தன்னை இணைத்து கொண்ட ஒரு மனிதனாக, பிரபஞ்சத்துல தன்னை ஒரு ஒண்ணுமே இல்லாதவராக கருதக்கூடிய, ஏன்னா எப்பயுமே பெரிய மனிதர்களுக்கு தான், நிறைய சாதித்தவர்களுக்கு தான் அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு உணர்வு ஏற்படுது. எனக்கு ஒரு ஜென் சேயிங் ஒண்ணு ஞாபகத்துக்கு வருது. ஒரு பறவை ஒரு கிளையில் அமரும் போது அந்த கிளையை நம்பி அந்த பறவை அமர்வதில்லை, தன்னுடைய இறக்கையை நம்பித்தான் அமர்கிறது என்று சொல்வார்கள். அதுபோல மனோ அவர் எதை நம்பியும் இந்த உலகத்தை கடக்கல, தன்னுடைய மனோபலத்தால் இந்த உலகை கடந்தவர். அவருக்கு அமர்வதற்கு எதுவுமே தேவையில்லை. அவர் தன்னுடைய நம்பிக்கை என்ற ஒரு இறக்கையை வைத்துக்கொண்டு இந்த உலகை கடந்து நம்ம எல்லாரையும் மகிழ்ச்சியில் ஆழ்த்தி விட்டு சென்றவர். மனோ போன்ற ஒரு மனிதரை நாம் இழந்து விட்டோம் என்று சொல்ல முடியாது. எப்பயுமே நாம் மனோவை இழக்கவில்லை. ஏனென்றால் அவர் நமக்கு கடத்திய அந்த நம்பிக்கையையும் மகிழ்ச்சியையும் கொண்டாட்டத்தையும் நாம் வைத்திருக்கும் வரை மனோ நம்மளோட தான் இருப்பார். நன்றி மனோ, உங்களுடைய நீங்கள் கொடுத்த எல்லாவற்றுக்காகவும் நாங்கள் உங்களுக்கு நன்றி செலுத்துகிறோம். நன்றி, வணக்கம்.
Good evening, everyone. As Usha Madam rightly said, Arvind Communications Department is one of the departments at Arvind that had a close association with Mano sir. So whenever he visited Arvind, he made it a point to visit us and check on each one of us. Our connection started probably 20 years back when we were asked to help him with his PowerPoint presentations. From then on, we have been closely working with him, assisting him with various of his book works and other writing related works. So in all these interactions, what struck us, all of us, the most was the level of perfection that he demanded in his works, and he demanded the perfection in our dealings with him. So all our interactions happened mostly over the phone. He would dictate the text to us, even mentioning the minute details like punctuations or like semicolon, colon, all those little details. We would type all those documents and send it by post to him the next day. In less than 2 days' time, he'll call us back, thanking us for the document. And then he would even point out a few typos in that document, which none of us would have noticed. It could be even as simple as an extra space that you have added in between the lines. So after a couple of such instances, we used to be extremely alert while taking down his notes, and we made, even before sending the document to him, all of us read it several times, and only after that we send it across to him. And recently we worked on a series of snippets, all based on his life incident, which he wanted to give to his grandsons, Ethan and Anikethan. And we would work on it several days, refining it every day. And at some point he would say that this is the end, you can save this as the final file in your records. And the very next day he would call us again and say that there are a series of corrections that I have to make. And we would start the work all over again. Sometimes I find it boring going through the same document over and over again. But now as I go through this beautifully crafted things, files, I think all those time and effort that we put into it was really worth it. Another thing that struck us all was the way in which he used to pack materials and send it to us by courier. It can be even a simple printout of a not so important email, but the way he packed, to make sure that the paper doesn't get folded and all, was really great. And he expected the same level of perfection from our side too. So whenever we used to send him materials, he would clearly instruct us not to fold the paper, how to keep cardboards on both sides so that the papers will remain intact inside the envelope. So all those were big learning opportunities, not just for me, but for our entire team. And recently I had an opportunity to work closely with him with his email correspondences when Sheila Madam was away in Vietnam for about 6 months. So we used to write emails almost every day to many of his friends, well-wishers, and even family members. It was a time when I realized how much he valued relationships and the great effort that he takes in maintaining them. And the way he used to address his friends was so interesting. Most of his friends would have some adjective to go before their name, like Pramila Madam was always Precious Pramila in our emails. And there was another of his friend whom we used to address, Kurumbu Switan. I still haven't met him. So all just to arrive at that adjective, we would spend several days to arrive at that right word to describe the person. So it was all wonderful memories of working with him. And most of his phone calls happen between 11:30 to 12:30, almost every day. So if at all, and I, over the time, I sort of developed an addiction to his voice, that if he doesn't call during that time, I would start feeling something missed. Then I would call him back and he would say that I got held up with some hospital visit or some friends came, and we will continue our chat. And now I badly miss all those days, his wonderful stories, his loud voice, the way he burst out laughing, narrating all those incidents. So we badly miss you, sir. Thank you.
Nilja, I think you're very lucky to be so closely associated with him. And thanks for sharing all those nitty-gritties. Siripura Sundari, an architect based in Chennai, who used to be one of Mano's close associates, initiated the idea of nominating Mano for the Padma Shri Award and did all the groundwork for it. She'll be connecting with us through Zoom. There she is.
Hello.
Yeah, you're audible, visible.
Hi. Yes, thank you, ma'am. To speak about Mano uncle, one thing that always comes up to my mind is how much uncle has impacted all our lives. So I was just writing down what all should I not miss. So one thing was we work a lot with traditional artisans, and after meeting uncle for some time, uncle said that he said he would like to visit a site in which a traditional flooring and wall was happening. And then he came in, and then we were having tea, and then we were sitting, and we just went out to make a call. And he was having this heartly conversation with 8 or 9 of our artisans there, and teaching them about the chemical equations of some of the flooring. And they still talk to me, and they ask me about how he was so down to earth and how he was teaching them. And few of my clients asked me how did the artisans know about this chemical equation part, and it's thanks to uncle. And this was just one of the instances. It was the same with every one of our friends from office whenever they visited uncle. And he was teaching English to one of our junior architects, who is now the senior architect in my office, Devika. And every time she would look forward to going with uncle to learn that. And Adirai and Arunima used to go to uncle to learn perspectives, and a few other students also. But most of the time, when any of us would be really down, and we would have some kind of issue or some kind of can you hear me now? Is it audible? Is it clear now, ma'am? Hello? Hello? Now is it clear, ma'am? Can you confirm?
We can hear you, Tripura Sundari. You just go on.
Yes, sir. I just got a message that there was a background noise with it. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes. So, but most of us would go to his house for his love for life and the encouraging words he would give us. So, one more thing was I met uncle when after his 81st birthday, and I always used to hear about his different birthday celebrations, and how the greeting cards, the letters, and the celebration and Aravind and all that. So every time he used to say that. So one day I requested, uncle, can we come home for your birthday? Can we come home and celebrate with you? And he was very welcoming, and he said yes. And till this year, my friends would look forward to celebrating uncle's birthday in his house. And it was not just about uncle, it was about all of us, and how he impacted each of their lives. For me personally, I had a lot of insecurities about how I look or how I talk, or how I attend a lot of meetings. But I remember the first time when there was a request for a photo interview, I said, no, I'm not doing it. And uh, I think after 2 days, I went and met uncle, and he convinced that do this interview, do this photo interview. And that was the very first interview about my work. And one thing I didn't want to miss mentioning was uncle's visit to the Madras Literary Society. And it was the time in 2016-17 that we started having, it is a historic structure which is more than 120 years. And we started having a lot of events in the Madras Literary Society. And one day we requested if uncle could come and he came with his architect friend, and he stayed on. And I think after that, every Saturday, he would actually inquire if there is actually an event and what is the topic. And even till November, he used to visit the event and speak to each and every one who was there and encourage them. And he always called the building a gentle giant. And he, not just for people, I think for places also, he had certain names. And all I have is gratitude, and all I have is thanks to Uncle, and the warmth and the love which Uncle gave all of us is something which we could never reciprocate back. And thank you for being that family to us, Uncle. Thank you so much. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tirupura Sundari. Thank you so much for joining us. Pavitra, a member of the Arvind family and Arvind's ambassador in the West. She's been in close touch with both Mahi and Mano and has a rich repository of many good memories of them. So may I request Pavitra to join and speak a few words? Pavitra,
Thank
please
you
go
all.
ahead.
Thank you. It's difficult to speak after so many powerful recollections and tributes. I'm going to share my little piece as best I can. My first meeting with Mano Uncle and Mahima Aunty was full of nervousness and rapture. I was a very shy college student studying English literature in Chennai. And one day, thanks to a kind introduction from my aunt Chitra, I found myself standing outside the gate of 1 Kangayarpuram, Papanasam Sivan Sale Road in Santhom. And I remember looking up at the brilliant bougainvillea overhead and feeling utterly tongue-tied. What could I possibly have to say to the couple inside? One of them a renowned author and artist, and the other a woman of profound goodness and grace. Both of them living such vibrant lives in the midst of acute physical limitations. I was so awestruck just by the idea of Mano Uncle and Mahima Auntie's existence that I almost didn't have the courage to meet them in person. But I'm so glad I did. There are certain people whom you meet and you know instantly that you will never forget them. They speak directly to your heart. And every time you encounter them, or really every time they simply cross your mind, something deep inside you remembers. This is why we are here. We are here to love deeply, to serve others, and to cherish the gifts that surround us in each moment. Please forgive me for not restricting my reflections to just Mano Uncle today. I can't separate Auntie and Uncle in my mind or heart. And to me, Mahima Auntie was Mano Uncle's source of light. Mano Uncle was Mahima Auntie's source of strength. And the love they shared was a living force that took so many people's breath away. There is a beautiful wedding photograph of the two of them that many of you have seen. The two of them are so young and unscathed. Mano Uncle is beaming and his radiant bride has her head sweetly tilted towards his. And there is such a palpable sense of joy, confidence, and serenity in this photograph. It's as if they already know nothing can extinguish their love. Not a devastating road accident, not an irreversible and blinding disease, not even death. In the crucible of tragedy and loss, they forged tremendous capacities. I have met very few people in my life with a heart as vast, wise, perceptive, and tender as Mahima Auntie's. I have met very few people in my life with a mind as resilient, energetic, wide-ranging, and dedicated as Mano Uncle's. His love gave her heart a sanctuary. Her love gave his mind the wings to soar. I was at Laiko when I first read the first handwritten letter Mahimanti ever wrote to me. It was early morning, and I remember the energy that seemed to emanate from each word. I remember realizing she wrote this letter by using a muscle in her shoulder to move a pen that was strapped to her fingers. And in this painstaking way, she had slowly formed the sweet river of words I was reading. And I remember folding the letter and dropping to the floor and pressing my forehead to the cool ground. I felt like I had been given a glimpse of tremendous grace, and the only way I knew how to respond was by bowing. Later, I shared this with Mahima Auntie, and I remember Uncle chuckling. And I knew he wasn't laughing at me. He was rejoicing in my experience. He knew I had caught a tiny glimpse of the steely strength, the awe-inspiring beauty, and the selflessness that he witnessed in his beloved wife every single day. It humbles me beyond words to know that for multiple decades, Uncle was Mahima Auntie's most faithful nurse and attendant, always looking for creative and practical ways to ease the burden of pain she carried. It amazed me that he could carry her safely up long flights of stairs in her wheelchair, even when he couldn't see the stairs or the wheelchair. It amazed me that she, with her gentleness, her deep faith in God, her gift for creating community, she could carry him too, even when she couldn't move her limbs. It inspires me that despite everything they went through, they never forgot their commitment, the commitment they made to each other to practice the art of giving. And they kept that promise to the very end. Their hospitality, as we have heard, was legendary. Their home was filled with laughter and music, exquisite art, and a wide circle of friends. Like many of you, I remember special columns with personalized messages at the doorsteps to welcome visitors. I remember the firm clasp of Uncle's hand in greeting and his booming voice calling out my name, brimming with deep affection and boyish mischief. I remember the startling power of his memory, how deeply in contact he was with life, and how freshly alive I felt in his presence. And I remember Auntie, luminous like the full moon, elegant in her beautiful saris, with fragrant jasmine in her hair, beckoning me with her eyes to come sit by her side. I remember her quiet dignity, her poetic gifts, her prayer, and how unconditionally loved I felt in her presence. Many years ago, my aunt wrote a letter of gratitude to Manohar Devadas, an author she had never dreamed of meeting, and yet today, 25 years later, here we all are. Here we all are gathered at his memorial from different corners of the world with his closest family. We are gathered here at an institution dedicated to giving people sight, attending the memorial of a man, an artist who was blind and who taught us all in so many ways how to truly see. How does one explain such friendships except to say that they are a miracle, a blessing, an act of grace? And now I am thinking of Mano Uncle's remarkable drawings, one of which is behind me. How astoundingly detailed and precise they are. Tens of thousands of pen strokes in each one that slowly add up to a finished picture that he himself could never see in its entirety. And it makes me wonder that perhaps that is really how life is. May we each add our pen strokes as faithfully as we can to the beautiful canvas that lights the lives of others, even if we never can see the completed piece ourselves. May we each practice in our own ways that art of giving that he and Auntie embodied so beautifully. Thank you.
Feeling so deeply and articulated all their qualities, their abundance and commitment. Thank you so much for joining us. We will now visualize the audio-visual compendium of Mano's memories through the lyrics of Prabhakar and the voice of Sanala, faculty at LICO.
உன் நினைவில் வாழ்கிறேன், அந்த கனவில் மூழ்கினேன். உன் நினைவில் வாழ்கிறேன், அந்த கனவில் மூழ்கினேன். மகிமா 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 நீ என் தேவதை, உன் நினைவில் வாழ்கிறேன், அந்த கனவில் மூழ்கினேன். தீர்ந்த அந்த நாட்கள் என் நினைவில் என்றும் இனிக்கும். பள்ளிக்காலங்களின் ஈரம் என் மனதின் ஓரம் இருக்கும். அன்றில்கள் போல் நாங்கள் விளையாடினோம், கவலைகள் இல்லாமல் கூத்தாடினோம். திசையற்ற மேகங்களாய் ஓடினோம், தேன் உண்ணும் வண்டாக பூ தேடினோம். கால் போன போக்காக காலங்கள் உருண்டோட நினைத்தால் நெஞ்சம் ஏங்கும். உன் நினைவில் வாழ்கிறேன், அந்த கனவில் மூழ்கினேன். திசையற்ற வாழ்க்கையிலே மெல்லிசையாக நீ புகுந்தாய். மனம் என்ற சுவர்தனிலே நீ மகரந்தம் பூசி சென்றாய். பட்டாம்பூச்சியாய் பறந்து வந்தாய், என் பாதை எங்கும் பூக்கள் தூவிச் சென்றாய். வெளிச்சங்கள் என் வாழ்வில் வெளியே இல்லை, ஆனாலும் இருளை நான் பார்க்கவில்லை. உன்னோடு நான் வாழ்ந்த காலங்கள் என்னோடு இருந்தால் போதும் அன்பே. உன் நினைவில் வாழ்கிறேன், அந்த கனவில் மூழ்கினேன். மகிமா 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 நீ என் தேவதை, உன் நினைவில் வாழ்கிறேன், அந்த கனவில் மூழ்கினேன்.
This song is also available on the YouTube in the name of Mahima. You can add Sanal as a keyword for easy access. Thank you. ஒளி இல்லை எனில் வழி இல்லை என்போரிடையே வேள்வியாய் அமைந்தது மனோவின் வாழ்வு நிறைவும் அடைந்தது. புலனால் உணராததை உணர்ச்சியால் அன்பால் அர்ப்பணிப்பால் எடுத்துக்காட்டாய் உதாரண புருஷனாய் விளங்கிய மனோ உமக்கு எமது நன்றி. His love for life and life of art is the art of living for us. Thank you all for being with us this evening and celebrating the life of Mano. Please join us for dinner, which is served upstairs.